Good morning. It's interesting being a religious science minister. When I first became involved as a minister and I started doing classes, and we would get deep into the work of Ernest Holmes and centering around his textbook, The Science of Mind, and a lot of his other ideas and teachings and writings, people would say to me, well, he is so optimistic, he's so upbeat, he's so affirmative, and he takes it to a syrupy level, a sugary level. And some people would say to me, well, doesn't that indicate that there's something shallow about him because, life is difficult and challenging? And my response to that is that I would say that for me personally, it indicates just the opposite. It shows me the depth that he has. To be able to look at the human condition and see what's going on in it in terms of this earthly realm in which we live, the density and the heaviness of the energy we live in. And when I say density and heaviness, that's not a judgment call. It's just simply, we have bodies, we have rain, we have a roof, we have a car, we have a mortgage. We have weight to our life. I have more weight than some people have. But so Ernest Holmes, knowing that, he brought forward an idea that lives in a lot of spiritual texts that come to us from all different corners of the earth for thousands of years, these really rich, wonderful texts and ideas. That there is something called our atmosphere. It is the totality of who and what we are, mind, body, and soul. How we think, how spirit resonates with us, and of course the physical, material, picturing of our lives, our existence, our physical existence. In fact, what Ernest Holmes talks about, I looked the other day in the concordance of Science of Mind and his other writings. I have a concordance. And he uses the word atmosphere a lot. And when you track down these quotes, you'll see that he's trying to inspire us to lift our atmosphere. And basically what he says is he says, in one of his quotes is that in terms of the idea of spiritual, what is spiritual? Holmes says it is inhabiting the atmosphere of God. I love that. Because I remember being raised in a religion where we would say the place of God or the atmosphere of God was some place that seemed completely unattainable to me because that was a place called heaven, or that was a place called a temple, or that was a place called something else. It was always kind of beyond me. It was out there, the atmosphere of God. So I'm stuck down here, and so somehow I can see it out there. But I'm out here doing my thing. I'm out here living my life. And Holmes says, no, the atmosphere of God is where we go. And it's interesting he says that because I think that, and again, this shows his depth, because he said, we can go to the atmosphere of God wherever we are. It goes from out there to right here, to there, to here, inside my car, inside my shower, inside my house, inside my job, inside my relationships can be the atmosphere of God. If I can center myself on spiritual or higher ideals. Because I think that Holmes, there's indications in his life, being born at the end of the 19th century and seeing things like tuberculosis, and then having lived, he left this world in around 1960, and so he saw World War I, he saw World War II, he saw other wars, he saw the beginnings of Vietnam, he saw Korea, and we know that he was very, very, very touched over the idea of war. That he was part of a demonstration in Los Angeles, 1939, 1940, where he and some other New Thought people at that time came together to hold a week-long conference, rally, demonstration, whatever you want to call it, in a recognition of the oneness of the human family, the oneness. And why would we go to war with each other? He wasn't taking sides. He wasn't saying fascism or whatever. He was just simply saying, "Why is there another way to recognize our oneness?" And he believed that if we could come together in oneness, we wouldn't have to do those things. Being born in the late 1800s, he saw the aftermath of the Civil War. He didn't see the Civil War, but he saw the veterans, and he saw how it tore our country apart. And I think that he was challenged to see, what did it really accomplish in terms of a profound healing? Now, we know good things came out of it, but what did it really accomplish in terms of profound healing? I think that was his question. And so I think his job was to inspire a movement into the atmosphere of God, the atmosphere of something higher, our higher selves. I'm reminded of this in terms of what he was trying to say. There was a prominent Native American healer who was asked one time, he said, someone asked him, "What do you think is the origin of evil in the world? I mean, when you look at the history of the world, what is the evil? What is the darkness? What is the origin of this?" And the Native American healer said, "It's low self-esteem." So, what are you talking about? And he said, when people do bad things to each other or to themselves, he said, "Do you think they feel good about themselves?" And I took that idea and I thought about it, and I kind of did some poking around. The idea of low self-esteem, we throw it around, I think, sometimes so much that it loses the power that it can have in terms of our lives. The presence of darkness, the presence of shadow. Because what low self-esteem really says is, it's a diminished sense of self. And this is the kicker. A belief in a diminished sense of self. A belief in a diminished sense of self. Now, what does psychology tell us about a belief? In order for us as human beings to have a belief, we are constantly looking for the evidence that it is true. So let's say I have a diminished sense of self in some way, shape, or form. Every day I get up, and whether I realize it or not on a conscious level, I am looking for that diminished sense of self to be proven to me, that my belief is correct. Imagine living within that. And I think that as human beings, we all can imagine that in some way, shape, or form. How you want to talk about weight, the weight of that. It's interesting that when you engage with people and you bring up the idea of low self-esteem, do you have low self-esteem? Do I have low self-esteem? What is low self-esteem? It's something that we tend, my experience with it is, we tend to, as people, to kind of blow it off. And I know the way I blow it off is I'll make a joke about it. And so that's my way. Psychology calls that deflection. I don't really want to talk about it. I want to deny it. I don't really want to go there. But what's interesting is that as a counselor and as someone who, and I'm very grateful for the training I've had in counseling, the years I've been invested in counseling, is that what I've learned and what I've been trained is, someone was up here earlier who was talking about energy work. And energy work, it is not my scope of practice, I'll put it that way. I've studied it, I've gone to classes, I've gone to seminars. I appreciate the fact that some people have taught me some things I can do for myself, but I would never do energy work on another personally, because that's not my thing, right? I don't see auras, I don't see colors, I don't see that type of thing. But in a weird way, I do practice a form of energy work. When we think of energy work, I think of, and I know there's all kinds of, I'm using it generically. There's all kinds of forms of it, and I don't mean any disrespect to that. But one of the ways of energy, one of the ideas of energy work is what's called cellular memory. And I've had people who I have a lot of respect for who do energy work, and they say that when they are working with people, sometimes they will work somewhere in the field of the body, the energetic field of the body, and someone will begin to become very emotional. Am I hurting you? No. But starting to cry, starting to feel depressed, starting to feel darkness. And I asked them, I said, what's that about? And they said, well, that's very often where trauma lives within somebody, or the idea of trauma. A good example of that, of how this works, how the physical world can reach in and touch us, is I was working with a client a while back who had a negative encounter with a male family member when they were a child. And she told me the smell of Old Spice almost makes her physically nauseated. Why is that? Because that's what he always wore. And so think about that. A scent comes in, she encounters that scent, and she nearly throws up. How powerful that is. Cellular memory. The way that I experience it a lot in counseling is when I will be sitting and talking to someone, and we're talking about whatever, and our conversation begins to go into some path, and especially around a path that is kind of traumatic, like if maybe someone has experienced something, or it's been done to them, or they've done it to themselves, or whatever. And what I do is I watch, when I'm with someone, I watch the whole thing. I watch the whole atmosphere. You know, that's been my training, not only in religious science, but in counseling. And I will see a shift. I will see the vision diverted. I will see the rocking of the body. I've had clients where we'll start talking about something, and they'll be sitting there, and we're at a table, their hands are on the table, or they're to their sides, or whatever, and we'll be talking about something. This is going to be kind of awkward to do with a microphone, but we'll be talking, and suddenly I notice that they kind of go into sort of a self-hug like this. It's not even crossing of the arms, it's a full-blown hug. And what that tells me is that what we are talking about, they're in need of a hug, and nobody gave them a hug, and they're looking for a hug because something has touched them so deeply. So when we walk around with a diminished sense of who we are, then we can sometimes look for ways to not have to face that, because that can be a burden. This is where, among other things, the world of what's called compulsive behavior or addiction or use disorders comes in. In other words, if I have a diminished sense of who I am, if that's my atmosphere, that's a tough place to live. And if I'm looking for people to reinforce that belief system, that's a tough place to live. So I need to find a place where I can go, where I can diminish the impact of the world around me. The atmosphere of addiction, the atmosphere of a use disorder, which is what it's called, has been, in my experience, best explained, and I'm going to go a little bit old school here, but I think most of us know what I'm talking about. If you can imagine a phone booth with 4 sides, we open the door, we walk in there, we close the door, and now we're in this cubicle. There's glass there, we can see out. But if it's raining, if it's wind's blowing, if people are outside, we're not feeling that. And if there's people outside talking to us, we can hear them, but it's muffled. And very often, when I'm working with clients who have come through the addiction process, and we sit down and talk to families, we will hear people say, my dad is there, but he's not. My mom is with us, but not really. Because we ask the question, what is it about active addiction that is so hard on relationships? And that's it right there. They're not with me. It seems I can see them, but I can't touch them. I can hear them, but I don't really hear them. They're present, but they're not. And the thing is that when you talk to the person, and for any of you who have experienced this in your own life, when you are the addicted person, when you are the person in the use disorder, you feel the same way. I'm with them, but I'm not. I'm there, but I'm not. Had a woman leave our program several months ago, and when she was leaving, I was kind of talking to her, and she said to me, because she was with us for 2 months, and every Saturday and Sunday her children would come and visit her. Her sister and her mom would bring her children. And she said, Andy, it's really funny. She said, now I yearn for their attention, and before they yearned for mine. And that was her healing. Because I said, what do you think was your healing in rehab? She said, my connection with my kids. And I can't wait to just get as much of them as I can. Because before, I didn't want anybody to get too close in terms of the atmosphere of where she was living. You see, that's what was so sweet for me when I first found religious science, and Ernest Holmes was this idea that we can inhabit that place where we begin to heal what's inside of us instead of allowing it to drive us to places that we don't want to go. I very much am a fan. We talk about great mystics, and I'm very much a fan of the story of the Buddha, whichever one you want, because it's mythology and there's different versions of it. And I know that mythology is the ancient psychology. So when you read mythology, you're actually reading psychology. And so the Buddha, Siddhartha, decides one day to face it. And I'm not getting into the doctrine of enlightenment or nirvana, because that's a whole thing I have respect for. But I'm gonna bring it into my wheelhouse a little bit, kind of down to earth a little bit, down to where I live. And so let's say that Siddhartha wants to. That's it. I'm coming down. I'm facing it. I'm going to inhabit a place of healing. I'm going to take my seat, and I'm going to take a look at all that stuff that has been in my atmosphere to this point. And there's one piece of mythological literature I love. It said that he walked around the Bodhi tree, and he felt the ground under him move like a cartwheel that's turning on an axle. And as he walked the cartwheel, imagine walking around the outside of that cartwheel on its edge. Imagine the cartwheel being this way. We're walking the edge, and as we walk, it's sort of uneven, the different spokes that are coming out. He walked and he walked, and he found a place, and he found the sweet spot, so to speak, the place of balance. He looked at that seat he was going to take underneath that tree, and he stood there for a moment, and the text says he strode to that seat like a lion. I love that. You know that stuff inside me, my low self-esteem, I'm taking you on, man. I'm taking you on. I'm going to open up this phone booth, and I'm going to come out of it. And I'm going to have to face some stuff. And so we go after it like a predator. We go after it like a lion. We go after the atmosphere of God like a lion. I'm using the term lion I'm not being gender specific, but now I want to be. So let's say lion, as in male and female lion. Let's talk about the lioness for a moment. The lioness, we know that she is the hunter. Now I'm talking about African and Asian lions for a moment. the ones who live in prides. She is the hunter. The dude ain't the hunter. He don't do that. She's built for hunting. She's strong, she's stealth, she's lighter than him. He's big, bulky, clumsy, right? He's strong. We're going to talk about him in a minute. And they say about the lioness, in things that I've read and documentaries I've seen, so they're hanging out, they're laying around, right? The kids are playing, they're grabbing each other's tail. The lionesses decide, it's usually a group of sisters, they decide it's time to go hunt. So they kind of get up, they start walking in that direction. And the kids, they go, oh, man, this is okay. The ladies are getting down. They're walking out there. Again, they stride. They stride out to the edge. The herd animals are out there. And they're looking. And they look and they look and they look and they almost, it's really interesting. Without communicating in the way that we think of communication, it's probably through pheromones and scents and sounds, whatever. They could be 200 animals out there. They're going to zero in on an animal. 3 or 4 sisters. And they will begin to gaze. And they say that the color of their eyes actually change. I've read that if you're in front of a lion and the color of their eyes changes, you're in trouble. And then they go. And that's it. That's the feminine aspect of Siddhartha. I'm there. I will sit in that seat. That's where I'm going to be. I'm going to take on my issues. In addiction, in recovery, we call those core issues. The core issues that are driving my atmosphere. Now let's talk about the male lion. The male lion has evolved through millions of years to be the protector. And he is good at that. Big, bulky, nasty disposition, strong. Few animals are as strong as they are. He's probably about twice the size of his sisters. He lays around. He doesn't do anything most of the time. He doesn't hunt. He goes and barbecues after they're done, right? So he's hanging around. The kids are playing. And all of a sudden, again, his senses, his intuition. Wow, there's something coming. It's another male lion. It's hyenas. It's somebody is coming our way. And he will get up. And when he gets up, then everybody watches. And again, he will stride in that direction to the edge of the pride. It's like, okay, bring it. And again, the color of his eyes change. And so Siddhartha walks to his position. And not only is he focused on being there, he is going to protect his work. It is going to become sacred. What the male lion does is called sacred protection. Nothing is going to blow me out of this spot. And what we know about the mythology is that all night long the storms blew and the demons came and the armies came and the darkness came, and Siddhartha never moved. He did his work. The work to raise his atmosphere. Sometimes in religious science we call it raising our consciousness above where we've been. That seat under the Bodhi tree was not heaven. It wasn't another realm. It was, as people in yoga would say, taking a seat on the cushion to take it on. That's how we begin to move beyond, where we are in terms of these dark forces that can drive addiction. So I want to end with 2 pieces here. One of them is Ernest Holmes in terms of healing the atmosphere. And he says, gradually a conviction dawns that spirit is all there is. And as this grows, the work is done more easily and with greater degrees of acceptance. A growing spiritual atmosphere comes into our transformation experience. He's basically saying we got to do the work. The heavenly realm is not up there. The heavenly atmosphere is not up there. It's here, but we have to build it. And this last piece is from a Buddhist teaching. Transformation practices must emphasize the need for courage and determination. Engagement, that's the lion, in a heroic struggle against all that in consciousness within us may represent limitation, separation, or emptiness. What is addiction? Limitation, separation, and emptiness. That's what it is. And we have to restore that to wholeness. That's our job. So, starting a week from next Saturday, if you want to join me, be great. That's what we're going to do. All right. So, you want to man your instrument? Okay. Woman, your instrument. All right. All right. So as we come together in consciousness, I am so grateful that the great mystics have come down through the ages and let us know that right where we are, God is. And that our ability to transform our lives is at hand. And I appreciate the teachings and the communities and the ideas, everything that we know today about healing, our ways of bringing it forward. I'm grateful for this center, which is a center of healing. I see this center as the great cushion on which we take our seat to do the work we must do to transform. And for that, I am very grateful. And so in my gratitude for this, I let my word go, knowing that it's so, and so it is.